Good evening, dear friends. Let me start by congratulating Sujib Sakya for a fabulous book. I commend it to you all. Reading the books allowed me to discover a different side of Sujib Sakya. Sujib Sakya, I learned, is a dreamer, but a dreamer with his feet on the ground. In this book, Unleashing Nepal, he unleashes a torrent of ideas, big and small, which cumulatively could change the face of Nepal within a generation. We have heard before many leaders speak about how they wanted to transform Nepal into a Switzerland or a Singapore. These days, many leaders speak about building an even more shining new Nepal that would be not only economically prosperous, but politically inclusive and socially egalitarian. But few such leaders ever provide us with any specifics, other than asking us to believe that some old, outdated ideologies will produce new miracles. A fascinating analysis I found in this book is how, over the decades, the people of Nepal have seemingly voted for leaders based on alluring, empty promises, or sometimes even based on threats. You know, in most mature democracies, the decisive issue in most elections is the economy. Remember Bill Clinton's famous expression, "It's the economy, stupid." But here in Nepal, so far it seems quite possible to win elections based on political slogans devoid of any economic substance. In this book, in an otherwise bleak analysis of Nepal's economic performance, from the days of the Shah kings to the Rana prime ministers to the Panchayat regime and parliamentary democracy, Sujib recounts one small flash of economic dynamism that occurred in the early 1990s. The economic liberalization policy of that period opened up the Nepali economy. Certainly that liberalization policy had its detractors and some real drawbacks, but it broke many fossilized monopolies. The monopoly of Radio Nepal was broken and dozens of FM radio stations started broadcasting, giving people choice to hear multiple views and multiple voices. The monopoly of the Royal Nepal Airlines was broken, giving people a choice of many airlines with better services. The monopoly of centralized issuance of passports by the foreign ministry in Kathmandu was broken, and people could get passports in their districts and explore the world. I recall in my own case, it took 1.5 years to get my first passport. Now you can get it in one day. The monopoly of a few state-controlled banks was broken, ending the era of having to stand in line for hours to get shoddy service, to put in or to take out your own money from the bank. And today, with so many banks, people now have choice of many customer-friendly banks providing modern and more efficient banking services. Notable progress was also made in expanding basic education and health services, roads and rural infrastructure. Nepal achieved the highest economic growth in recent memory in the early 1990s, peaking at 7.9% growth in GDP in 1993 and 94. This was the era when the so-called license Raj ended in India, allowing it to graduate from the infamous Hindu growth rate. And China achieved double-digit growth with the blossoming of Deng Xiaoping's socialist market economy, replacing Maoist autarky. But political instability and the rise of the Maoist insurgency led to the bursting of the economic bubble in Nepal. We had 11 prime ministers in 10 years, law and order deteriorated, corruption proliferated, and sadly, Nepal proved once again how politics continues to trump economics. In this book, Sujib Sakya outlines how we might build a strong economy in Nepal. As far as I know, Sujib is not a politician, so he is not doling out empty campaign promises, as political leaders tend to do. His prescriptions for unleashing Nepal's potential are informed by a good analysis of Nepal's feudal past, chaotic present, and an optimistic future. Now, I neither have the time nor the intention to summarize the whole book, because if I did so, perhaps you will not buy the book. But just to whet your appetite, here are some of the ways Sujib argues how we can unleash a new Nepal. Learning from the positive outcomes of breaking up certain monopolies in the past, he makes a strong case that we break up Nepal's two remaining huge, inefficient monopolies, the Nepal Electricity Corporation and the Nepal Oil Corporation. I'm sure that none of us who had to endure up to 18 hours of power cuts and waiting in line for hours to get a meager ration of adulterated gasoline, we would not be shedding too many tears if these monopolies were shaken up by some competition. Sujib advocates in the book for 6 priority areas of reforms with specific suggestions: land reform, tax reform, capital market reform, financial sector reform, labor reform, and fiscal reforms. These reforms, he argues, would help unleash a chain of creativity and dynamism in the Nepalese economy, encouraging the private sector to invest in creating jobs and wealth. The book identifies a number of areas as potential niche markets for Nepal to excel and become a world-class service provider. For example, with Nepal's enormous potential for diverse kind of tourism, the hospitality industry would be one where Nepal can shine. The author also urges us to get over our mentality of seeing ourselves as a vulnerable little landlocked country, a soft little yam between two huge rocks, and think of Nepal as the great land bridge between the world's largest and most vibrant economies, China and India. Indeed, we are urged to embrace globalization with a gusto and think of Nepal's economic borders as enveloping the whole world. Nepal is wherever Nepalis are, he argues. Today, on the eve of the 4th Global NRN conference here in Kathmandu, we know that Nepalis are spread all across the continent and almost all countries of the world. The potential contribution of NRNs and what Sujib calls Bipalis, that Videshi Nepalis, could be one of the great assets in a dramatic transformation of Nepal. Well, friends, I must confess